A human warship resisted a direct hit from advanced alien ion cannons, shocking the Galactic Council and sparking fears of unbeatable human military might spreading across the stars. Emergency klaxons blared, holoprojectors flashed crimson, representatives from 100 worlds rushed into the colossal Galactic Council chamber. The soaring space was a flurry of panicked chatter. Insectoid Krylix clicked and chattered from the left wing. 12-eyed nebulites floated over the center aisle in jittery, translucent orbs. Towering 7-foot reptilian saurians stomped up to their seats on the right, tails thrashing. Weezon, a hulking saurian in black body armor, strode to the central podium. His forked tongue flicked as he activated the holoprojector. It showed a sleek, silver human vessel adrift in the stars. This is what destroyed the pride of the Saurian fleet, Weezon shouted, pounding the podium. Our most powerful ion cannon struck true. Any other species ship would have been vaporized, but not this one. This cursed human ship took a direct hit and kept fighting. It retaliated with primitive kinetic weapons and crippled our flagship. Nothing in the history of the Council has ever survived our ion cannons. Ever. We don't know how many human ships are out there. Hundreds, thousands. An armada of vessels immune to our most potent weapons. The Council chamber exploded into yells and cries of alarm. Dozens of alien races all began shouting. Weezon slammed his fists again, scales rattling, teeth bared. We must wipe out this human threat now, before they spread further into our galaxy, before they destroy us all in favor of a decisive first strike. Cacophonous screeching, hissing, and growling filled the air as appendages rose in ascent across the assembly. While the commotion grew, a hooded figure slipped silently out of the rear entrance. The bipedal form strode down a darkened corridor, then removed its hood, revealing the determined human face of Will Rice, humanity's infiltrator in the Galactic Council. He keyed his communicator. This is Agent Rice. The Council just declared war on Earth. They know about the Halifax resisting their weapons. I need immediate extraction. If I don't get this intel back home, humanity won't see the alien attack coming. Our only chance is... A bolt of searing plasma exploded against the wall an inch from Rice's face. 5 Saurian guards with rifles drawn charged down the passage. Rice sprinted around the corner, pulse pounding, knowing Earth's survival depended on his escape. Rice's heart raced as he clung to the underside of the SS Dominus, his stealth tech rendering him invisible to the Saurian ship's sensors. He crawled along the hull until he reached an airlock. With a few quick taps on his wrist computer, he hacked the lock and slipped inside. The human agent crept through the Saurian vessel's dimly lit corridors, taking care to avoid patrols. He ducked into a computer terminal alcove and jacked in, his fingers flying over the alien controls. Schematics and battle plans flashed across the screen. Rice's eyes widened. My God, they're amassing a fleet of hundreds of ships, all to attack Earth to wipe us out before we can challenge them. He downloaded the invasion data to a microchip embedded in his palm. I have to warn... Rice spun to see Weezon looming in the doorway, a disruptor pistol aimed at his chest. Rice's hand inched toward his own concealed plasma gun. Weezon, I'd say it's a pleasure, but we'd both know that's a lie. Your infiltration ends here, spy. Weezon's finger tightened on the trigger. When your body is found aboard this ship, it will give us the perfect excuse to begin the invasion immediately and... Rice dove sideways, a disruptor bolt sizzling over his head. He rolled and came up firing, blue plasma bursts exploding against Weezon's armored scales. The hulking Saurian shrugged off the hits and charged, tackling Rice into the corridor. The two grappled, rolling and punching human flexibility against Saurian brawn. Rice twisted and kicked, sending Weezon crashing into a wall. Alarms began to blare. Rice snap-drew his plasma pistol and fired, burning a hole in Weezon's shoulder. The Saurian roared in pain and fury. I'll pay for that, mammal. When I lead the first wave of ships to your planet, I will personally burn your cities, crush your people, and mount your leaders' heads on... Rice silenced him with a spinning kick to the snout. Bone crunched, teeth scattered. Raisin toppled back out cold. Rice could hear shouts and tramping feet approaching. He sprinted toward the hangar bay. Plasma bolts crisscrossed around him as he leapt and slid under the closing bay doors. Rice made it to a Saurian fighter and vaulted in, his hands flying over the controls. The ship lifted off on anti-gravs, whirling to face the doors. Rice triggered the fighter's main guns and blasted the doors to molten scrap. Then he punched the thrusters and rocketed out into open space, pushing the alien craft to maximum burn. I have to get this information back to the Alliance High Command. It may be the only way to save Earth and the galaxy. Weason stood on the smoldering flight deck, green blood leaking from his mangled snout, the pain fueling his building rage. He would destroy that human and mount his head on a pike. But first, he had a planet to raise and billions to slaughter. The invasion would begin ahead of schedule, and he would lead it. The Saurian fighter's engines screamed as Will pushed them to their limits. Stars blurred past the cockpit. His hands flew over the alien controls, plotting a course to Earth, praying he wasn't too late. As soon as he hit dirt, he was moving, sprinting across the landing pad and into the hidden entrance of the United Earth Defense Council. Uniformed soldiers snapped to attention as he raced past. He burst into the command center. Admiral Graves, the Saurians are coming, now with everything they've got. The grizzled old warrior looked up from a holographic battle map, eyes narrowing. Rice, I was starting to think the lizards got you. What have you got for me? Will slammed the data chip into the computer. Schematics and battle plans flashed to life. A full-scale invasion, hundreds of ships, troop transports. They mean to wipe us out, and they're already on their way. He turned back to Will. Looks like that infiltration wasn't for nothing. You may have just given us a fighting chance. I'm putting you in charge of the ghosts. You'll be our ace in the hole when the snakes make planetfall. Will nodded, adrenaline already pumping. We'll be ready. The first Saurian ships screamed into Earth orbit mere hours later. But humanity was ready for them. Hidden platforms shimmered into view, disgorging tungsten railgun slugs at a fraction of light speed. The super-hardened projectiles, immune to the lizard's weapons, tore through shields and hulls like tissue paper. Saurian ships exploded into clouds of molten debris. Weason snarled in rage as his ships died around him. The Dominus's bridge shook as a railgun round nearly gutted the dreadnought. All ships full assault, troop landers, make for the surface. Drop pods rained down on a dozen cities worldwide. Saurian warriors stormed out, plasma rifles blazing. But humanity met them head-on. Tanks rumbled, rocket launchers roared. Marines and militia fought for every block and building. In New York, the ghosts made their stand. Will led them in hit-and-run strikes using cloaking tech and hypersonic flechette rifles to wreak havoc on the invaders. Skyscrapers became sniper nests. Subway tunnels became ambush points. The lizards paid for every inch in blood. Weason himself dropped right into the middle of the chaos, his elite guard at his side. Plasma bolts and kinetic rounds crisscrossed as human and Saurian clashed. Will glimpsed the warlord amid the carnage, hatred burning in his eyes. "Weason," Will fired, his flechettes ricocheting off the Saurian's armor. "You wanted Earth so bad, come and take it." Weason roared, the primal battle cry of an apex predator. He leveled his plasma rifle and charged, his troops surging forward around him. Will and the ghosts met them head-on, war cries on their lips. The battle for Earth had begun. Plasma bolts seared the air as Will dove for cover behind a crumbled wall. His team was pinned down, the Saurians advancing relentlessly. Suddenly, Sergeant Hawkins cried out over the comm. "Sir, I see a weakness in their armor at the base of the skull. A precise hit there could take them down." Will's eyes narrowed. He peeked over the rubble, scanning the nearest Saurian. There, just as Hawkins said, a small gap where the alien's helmet met its armored collar. A grin split Will's face. "Ghost's new plan. Aim for the weak point at the neck joint. Let's show these lizards what human ingenuity can do." The tide turned. The ghosts moved like lightning, flanking and striking with surgical precision. Saurian warriors fell one after another as hypersonic flechettes found their mark. The invaders' advance faltered. High above, aboard the Dominus, Wezen slammed a fist onto the armrest of his command chair as he watched the battle's turn, his scaled face contorted with rage. This could not stand. He would rip that human leader limb from limb himself. The warlord stomped to the comm station, shoving the officer aside. He activated a system-wide broadcast. "Will Rice," Wezen's bellow echoed across every human and Saurian channel. "I challenge you to single combat. Face me if you dare, and let's settle this once and for all." On the streets of New York, Will heard the challenge and smiled coldly. A chance to cut the head off the snake. To end this here and now. He keyed his comm. "I accept." Times Square lay in ruins, a testament to the ferocity of the battle. Will strode through the rubble-strewn streets to the center, where Wezen waited, a hulking figure in black armor. The Saurian's eyes glowed with malice. "So the great human hero comes to die." Wezen's voice was a rumbling growl. "We'll see about that." Will drew his plasma pistol, aiming it squarely at Wezen's chest. With a roar, the Saurian charged, clawed gauntlets slashing. Will fired plasma bolts sizzling against Wezen's armor. The alien shrugged off the hits and barreled into Will, sending him crashing into a wrecked car. Will rolled with the impact and came up swinging, landing a solid punch to Wezen's snout. The Saurian reeled back, shaking his head. Will pressed the attack, launching into a flurry of strikes honed by years of training. But Wezen was fast, far faster than any Saurian Will had fought before. The alien warlord parried and countered, matching Will blow for blow. They fought like titans, raging back and forth across the square, crushing concrete and twisting metal beneath their feet. Wezen's claws raked across Will's chest plate, leaving glowing scars in the nano-forged armor. Will retaliated with a point-blank plasma shot to the Saurian's shoulder, burning away layers of scale and flesh. The alien bellowed in pain and fury. He reached back, ripping a strange device from his belt. A weapon Will had never seen before. Wezen leveled it at the human, eyes blazing. A beam of searing white light erupted from the device, lancing toward Will's heart. Time seemed to slow. Will braced for the end. But it never came. A figure leapt in front of him, taking the blast head-on. Captain Sarah Briggs, his second-in-command, his friend, collapsed to the ground, smoke rising from a gaping hole in her chest. She met Will's eyes and smiled weakly. Then she was gone, the life fading from her eyes. Will knelt beside her, grief and rage warring in his heart. He reached out, gently closing her eyes, then stood, turning to face Wezen. The Saurian laughed, a cold and cruel sound. "How touching, but ultimately meaningless. You will all die just the same." Will's hand tightened on his pistol, knuckles white. His eyes hardened, all mercy gone. Will's vision blurred with tears and rage. Sarah's sacrifice would not be in vain. He launched himself at Wezen, a primal roar tearing from his throat. The Saurian met his charge head-on, claws slashing. They clashed in a whirlwind of fists and fury. Will ducked and weaved, using every ounce of his training to avoid Wezen's deadly strikes. He countered with rapid-fire jabs and kicks, targeting the weak points in the alien's armor. Wezen snarled, his tail lashing out to sweep Will's legs. The human leapt over it and retaliated with a spinning backfist that cracked against Wezen's jaw. The Saurian staggered, shaking his head. Will pressed his advantage, raining down blows in a relentless assault. Wezen backpedaled, his defenses crumbling under the onslaught. With a final devastating uppercut, Will sent the alien's weapon flying from his grasp. The prototype clattered to the ground. Both combatants lunged for it. Will reached it first, snatching it up and whirling to face Wezen. The Saurian roared in frustration and charged, razor-sharp claws extended. Will fired, but Wezen was too fast. He dodged the beam and slammed into Will, driving him back. Claws tore into Will's armor, rending metal and flesh. Pain exploded through him as he felt the razor edges pierce his side. Warm blood flowed. Wezen leaned in, close, fetid breath washing over Will's face. "Yield, human. Your world is doomed." Will gritted his teeth. agony and determination warring within him. He met Vazen's gaze, eyes blazing. Never. With a Herculean effort, he brought the prototype weapon up and around, wielding it like a war club. Vazen's eyes widened in sudden realization. Will roared, a battle cry to shake the heavens, and brought the weapon crashing down on Vazen's skull, directly on the weak point at the base. The blow rang out like thunder. Armor shattered, bone crunched. Vazen staggered back, eyes glazing, dark blood pouring from his ruined head. He took one stumbling step, then another, before crashing to the ground in a clatter of broken plates. He lay still, unmoving, dead. Will stood over his fallen foe, chest heaving, the weapon clutched tight. Around him the Saurian forces faltered, seeing their mighty leader defeated. Panic spread through their ranks like wildfire. The ghosts surged forward, pressing the attack with renewed zeal. Plasma bolts and flechettes scythed through the invaders, cutting them down in droves. The Saurians broke, fleeing back to their ships in total disarray. Will raised the prototype high, its barrel still glowing with heat. For Earth, he bellowed, his voice carrying across the battlefield. For humanity. The ghosts took up the cry, roaring their defiance to the skies. As one they charged, an unstoppable tide of human fury, driving the Saurians back to their landing craft. Engines flared as the aliens fled, their invasion shattered, their hopes of conquest dashed upon the indomitable spirit of mankind. Will stood amidst the ruins, watching the Saurian ships rise into the sky, fleeing for the cold darkness of space. His body ached, his wounds burned, but his heart soared with fierce pride. They had done it. They had won. For now there was still work to be done. He turned to his ghosts, his brothers and sisters in arms battered but unbroken. They looked to him, their eyes alight with the fire of victory. "This is only the beginning," Will said, his voice raw with emotion. "We've shown them what we're made of. We've shown them the strength of humanity. But they'll be back, and we'll be ready for them. We'll fight them on every front, in every corner of the galaxy. We'll never stop fighting, not until the Saurian threat is ended once and for all." As the smoke cleared and the Saurian ships retreated, the people of Earth erupted in celebration. In cities across the globe, crowds poured into the streets, cheering the names of Will Rice and his brave ghost team. News feeds were filled with images of the battered but victorious soldiers, their faces weary but proud. Will, still clutching the alien weapon that had felled Vazen, was hailed as the savior of humanity. But even as the world rejoiced, dark clouds gathered on the horizon. In the grand halls of the Galactic Council, shock and outrage reigned. The assembled representatives of 100 worlds watched the footage of their Saurian allies fleeing in disgrace, defeated by the very species they had sought to conquer. The council erupted in a cacophony of clicking, hissing and growling as each species vied to be heard. Some called for diplomacy, others for immediate retaliation. But Zixkar's voice cut through the din like a plasma blade. "We must act swiftly and decisively," he declared. "I will lead a coalition force to Earth. We will blockade their planet, cut them off from the stars. Let them rot in their own isolation." Murmurs of assent rippled through the chamber. The plan was set in motion. Within cycles, a vast armada of ships from a dozen worlds assembled at the edge of Earth's solar system. Sleek Krylic bioships, bristling with mind control spores, formed the vanguard. On Earth, the celebrations turned to confusion and unease as the alien fleet appeared in the skies. Massive ships, each the size of a city, took up positions in high orbit, their weapons trained on the planet below. In the UEDC command center, Admiral Graves frowned at the holographic display. "What the hell are they playing at? We won. The Saurians are gone. Why are they still here?" Will, his wounds still fresh, stood at Graves's side. A sense of dread knotted in his gut. "I don't like this, Admiral. They're up to something." As if on cue, a transmission from the Krylic flagship flickered to life on the main screen. General Zixkar's visage filled the display, his mandibles twitching. "People of Earth," he began, his voice a grating buzz. The Galactic Council has deemed your species a threat to the peace and stability of the galaxy. As of this moment, your planet is under quarantine. Any attempt to leave your atmosphere will be met with lethal force. Graves slammed his fist on the console. They can't do this. We have rights, damn it! But Zixcar was unmoved. You have proven yourselves too dangerous to be allowed free rein. Be grateful we do not simply exterminate you. Defy us, and you will face the consequences. The transmission cut out, leaving a stunned silence in its wake. Will felt a cold fury rising within him. They had fought so hard, sacrificed so much, only to trade one threat for another. In the days that followed, strange reports began to filter in from across the globe. Key government officials and military leaders started to behave erratically, making bizarre decisions that seemed to undermine Earth's unity and defenses. Paranoia and mistrust spread like wildfire. Will, still recovering in a UEDC medical facility, couldn't shake the feeling that something was deeply wrong. Late one night, as he lay sleepless in his hospital bed, a shadow detached itself from the corner of the room. Will jerked upright, reaching for a weapon that wasn't there, but the figure raised its hands in a placating gesture. The figure stepped into the dim light, revealing a woman with piercing eyes and close-cropped hair. She wore a dark, form-fitting suit that seemed to absorb the light. "Who are you?" Will demanded. "How did you get in here?" The woman smiled thinly. "Call me Raven, and let's just say I have my ways." She perched on the edge of Will's bed, her gaze intense. "I represent a resistance movement within the Galactic Council itself. We've been watching you, Commander. Your victory against the Saurians was impressive." Will's eyes narrowed. "What do you want?" Raven leaned in close. "The same thing you do to protect humanity. But what you fought off was just the beginning. The Council's true agenda is far more sinister." She produced a small holographic projector from her suit and activated it. Images of humans in chains, toiling under the watchful eyes of alien overseers, sprang to life. "They don't want to just contain you. They want to enslave you, exploit you for your unique abilities and technology. They've already begun infiltrating your world, sowing discord from within." Will's mind raced, pieces falling into place. The strange behavior of the leaders, the unease he couldn't shake. "What can we do?" Raven's eyes gleamed. "Fight back, join us, and together we can expose the truth, bring down the Council's tyranny." Will hesitated, torn between his loyalty to the UEDC and the growing realization that the threat was far greater than he had imagined. He met Raven's gaze, determination hardening in his eyes. "I'm in, but we do this my way. No more secrets, no more lies." Raven nodded, a hint of respect in her expression. "Understood, Commander. Welcome to the Resistance." As she slipped back into the shadows, Will knew his fight was far from over. The battle for Earth had been won, but the war for humanity's future was just beginning. He would have to become a ghost once more, operating in the shadows to unravel the Council's web of deceit. But this time, he wouldn't be alone. With Raven and the Resistance at his side, he would fight to his last breath to ensure that humanity would never be enslaved, never be broken. The Galactic Council had no idea what they had unleashed. Will Rice was coming for them, and heaven help any who stood in his way. Will and Raven slipped through the shadows of Zephyrus, their Krylic disguises blending them seamlessly into the alien crowd. The city was a dizzying maze of towering spires and twisting streets, pulsing with strange energy. They moved with purpose, avoiding the watchful eyes of the Council's security forces. Will's heart pounded as they approached the imposing structure at the city's heart, the Galactic Council's headquarters. The building loomed like a sinister monolith, its obsidian walls seeming to absorb the light. Raven led the way, her movements fluid and cat-like. She keyed a sequence into a hidden panel and a door slid open with a hiss. They slipped inside, into a dimly lit corridor that thrummed with ominous power. As they ventured deeper into the complex, the air grew thick with the stench of chemicals and fear. Muffled screams echoed from behind sealed doors. Will's gut twisted with a sickening realization. This was no ordinary government building. This was a place of horrors. They came to a heavily guarded door, a dozen Kryllic soldiers standing watch. Raven's eyes met Will's, a silent signal passing between them. In a blur of motion they struck, their human speed and strength catching the Kryllics off guard. Will's fists and feet flew in a deadly dance, bone crunching and armor shattering with each devastating blow. Raven was a whirlwind of blades, her knives finding gaps in chitin and flesh with surgical precision. In moments the guards lay broken and still. Will hacked the door controls, his heart racing as it slid open to reveal a cavernous laboratory. Row after row of containment pods lined the walls, each one holding a human captive, their faces contorted in agony. And there, in the center pod, was a face Will knew all too well. Michael, his brother, lost years ago on a fateful mission. Rage and relief warred within Will as he smashed the pod's controls, the glass shattering and fluid spilling across the floor. Michael collapsed into Will's arms, his body emaciated and scarred. "Will," he croaked, his voice hoarse from disuse. "Is it really you?" Tears streamed down Will's face as he held his brother close. "I'm here, Michael, I'm here. We're getting you out of this hellhole." Raven worked quickly, freeing the other captives from their high-tech prisons. Alarms began to blare as the Council's forces finally caught on to their intrusion. "We need to move, now!" Raven shouted over the din. Supporting Michael between them, Will and Raven fought their way back through the complex, the freed humans using their newfound abilities to turn the tide against their captors. Kryllic warriors fell before their onslaught, their weapons and armor useless against human fury. They burst from the building into the chaotic streets, racing towards their hidden ship. But their path was blocked by a towering figure in gleaming black armor. General Zixcar, his compound eyes glittering with malice. "Did you really think you could infiltrate the heart of the Council and escape unscathed?" Zixcar hissed, his mandibles clicking. "Your pathetic resistance ends here, human." Will passed Michael to Raven, his eyes hardening as he stepped forward to face the Kryllic general. "You've underestimated us for the last time, Zixcar. We will expose your corruption and free humanity from your clutches." Zixcar laughed, a grating alien sound. He drew a pulsing energy blade, its sickly green light reflecting off his chitin. "Come then, Will Rice. Let us end this once and for all." Will unslung his own weapon, a crackling plasma staff reverse-engineered from captured Saurian tech. The two warriors circled each other, their weapons humming with deadly potential. Then, in a clash of blinding light and searing heat, they met in a furious melee. Will's staff spun and struck in a dizzying pattern, clashing against Zixcar's blade in showers of sparks. The Kryllic general was fast, his exoskeleton-enhanced strength matching Will's own. They danced a lethal waltz through the debris-strewn street, their weapons carving molten scars into the metal and stone around them. Will ducked and wove, narrowly avoiding strikes that would have severed limbs. Zixcar pressed his advantage, his blade slashing down in a brutal arc. Will leapt back, the searing plasma singeing his hair. He retaliated with a lightning-fast strike to Zixcar's thorax, cracking the chitin and drawing a howl of pain from the Kryllic. The battle raged on, neither warrior giving quarter. Will's muscles burned with exertion, his breath coming in ragged gasps. But he pushed forward, driven by a lifetime of loss and betrayal, of watching his people suffer under alien oppression. This was his chance to strike back, to light the spark of revolution. In a final desperate gambit, Will feinted left, then lunged forward, his staff aimed at Zixcar's heart. The Kryllic general moved to parry, but too slow. The crackling plasma tip punctured his exoskeleton, burning through flesh and bone. But Will was already moving, leaping past the fallen general to join Raven and the others. They piled into their waiting ship, the engines roaring to life. As they blasted free of Zephyrus's atmosphere, Will looked down at the receding cityscape, his heart full of grim determination. They had struck a blow against the Council today, but the war was far from over. With the truth of the Council's crimes in hand, and his brother at his side, Will knew the fight was only beginning. Humanity would rise, and the galaxy would tremble before its might. As Will, Raven, and the newly freed Michael raced through the twisting corridors of the Galactic Council's headquarters, a sudden blow sent Will crashing to the ground. He looked up, dazed, to see Michael looming over him, eyes glowing with an eerie red light. "Michael, what are you doing?" Will gasped, struggling to his feet. He lashed out with inhuman speed, his fist connecting with Will's jaw and sending him reeling. Will stumbled back, his mind reeling. The Council's conditioning had taken hold of Michael, turning him against his own flesh and blood. "Michael, please," Will pleaded, dodging another blow. "This isn't you. Fight it." But Michael was relentless, his enhanced strength and speed making him a formidable opponent. They traded blows, their battle raging through the corridors, smashing through walls, and leaving destruction in their wake. Raven, meanwhile, found herself face to face with General Zixcar. The Krylik's mandibles clicked in anticipation as he leveled his bioweapon at her. "You've caused enough trouble, human," Zixcar hissed. "It's time to end this." The weapon fired, a pulsing green bolt of energy streaking towards Raven. But she was ready, her own abilities surging to the surface. She threw up a shimmering force field, the bolt shattering against it in a shower of sparks. Zixcar snarled in frustration, firing again and again. But Raven's defenses held, her own energy blasts forcing the Krylik back. Will and Michael's fight had reached a fever pitch, both brothers battered and bleeding. Will's heart ached with every blow, every cry of pain from his sibling. For a moment Michael hesitated, a flicker of confusion crossing his face. Will seized his chance, lunging forward and pressing a small device against Michael's temple, the neural disruptor. Michael screamed, his body convulsing as the Council's conditioning shattered. He collapsed to his knees, eyes wide and haunted. "What have I done?" he whispered, horror dawning on his face. Together, the brothers charged towards the Krylik general, who was still locked in combat with Raven. Michael slammed into Zixcar from the side, knocking him off balance. Raven pressed her advantage, her energy blasts hammering against the general's armor. Will leapt into the fray, his fists and feet a blur of motion. The three humans worked in perfect sync, their abilities complementing each other. Zixcar fought back with all his strength, but he was outmatched and overwhelmed. With a final devastating blow from Will, the general stumbled backwards, his armor cracked and sparking. He teetered on the edge of a sheer drop, arms flailing. "This isn't over, humans," Zixcar spat, hatred burning in his eyes. "The Council will—" But his words were cut off as he lost his balance, tumbling over the edge and vanishing into the abyss below. Will, Michael, and Raven stood there, chests heaving, bodies aching. They had won, but at a terrible cost. "We have to get this evidence back to Earth," Will said, holding up the data drive they had stolen. "The galaxy needs to know the truth about the Council." Leaning on each other for support, the trio limped towards their waiting ship, ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. Will and Raven emerged from their stolen ship into the chaotic landing bay of UEDC headquarters. Soldiers and personnel scrambled around them, a flurry of activity in response to their sudden arrival. Ignoring the commotion, Will strode forward, Raven and a dazed Michael in tow. They burst into the command center, drawing the attention of Admiral Graves and the assembled world leaders. Will slapped a data chip onto the central hollow table. "We have proof," he declared, his voice ringing with conviction. "The Galactic Council has been experimenting on humans, enslaving us, manipulating our governments. It's all here." The holographic display sprung to life, revealing the horrors they had witnessed. Human captives subjected to brutal experiments, mind control devices implanted into unwitting subjects, secret meetings between council agents and compromised human officials. The room erupted into a cacophony of outrage and disbelief. Leaders shouted over each other, demanding explanations, retribution, war. Admiral Graves silenced the uproar with a sharp gesture. "This is the final straw," he growled. The Council has gone too far. It's time we take the fight to them. In the days that followed, the UEDC worked tirelessly, reverse engineering the alien technology they had acquired. Ships were retrofitted with advanced shields and weapons, soldiers equipped with powered exoskeletons and plasma rifles. The Ghosts, now under Michael's command, trained relentlessly, honing their skills against captured alien warriors. Raven shared her insider knowledge of the Council's defenses, helping plan the perfect strike. As the fleet assembled in Earth orbit, a sense of grim determination settled over the crews. This was it, the moment they had been preparing for. The chance to strike back against their oppressors and secure humanity's place in the stars. On the bridge of the flagship, the UES Retribution, Will stood tall, his eyes fixed on the viewscreen. Admiral Graves's face appeared, transmitted from UEDC Command. "Commander Rice, the fleet is yours. Hit them hard and fast. Show them what happens when they mess with humanity." Will nodded, his jaw set. "We won't let you down, Admiral. It's time for the Council to learn the meaning of human ingenuity." The fleet jumped to the Council's home system, sensors detecting a vast array of alien ships waiting for them. Each sleek bioship bore the colors of the different Council races, from the spindly Krylic vessels to the hulking Saurian dreadnoughts. Will's voice boomed across the fleet's comms. "This is it, people. The fight we've been waiting for. Remember your training, trust your tech, and watch each other's backs. We're ending this here and now." As one, the human ships surged forward, their reverse-engineered shields shrugging off the opening salvo of alien fire. Will barked orders, coordinating the fleet's movements with practiced precision. "Cruiser group, focus fire on the Saurian ships. Frigates, screen our flanks from those Krylic interceptors. Ghosts, prepare to board the command ship." The space around them erupted into a maelstrom of flashing lights and explosions as the fleets clashed. Human ships danced through the chaos, their advanced engines and targeting systems giving them a critical edge. Will watched as a Saurian dreadnought crumbled under the combined fire of a dozen human cruisers, its hull shattering into molten fragments. A fierce grin split his face. They were doing it. They were winning. "Commander, we've got a lock on the Council's command ship," Michael's voice crackled over the comms. "We're ready to board on your order." He turned to Raven, who stood at his side, her face set with determination. "You're with me. We're going to personally ensure the Council faces justice." As the Retribution closed in on the massive command ship, Will and Raven led a strike team into the boarding pods. They rocketed across the void, slamming into the alien hull with a bone-jarring impact. The pod's doors blasted open, and the team surged out, weapons blazing. They were immediately met by a horde of alien defenders, each species presenting a new and deadly challenge. Insectoid Krylics skittered along the walls, their acid-spewing weapons eating through armor. Hulking Saurians charged forward, their scales deflecting bullets and plasma bolts. Nebulite psionics assaulted the team's minds, trying to turn them against each other. But the humans fought with a ferocity born of desperation and righteous fury. Will and Raven led the charge, their weapons and abilities working in perfect sync. They cut a path through the alien horde, leaving a trail of broken bodies in their wake. As they fought deeper into the ship, Will's heart pounded with anticipation. Somewhere on this vessel, the Supreme Chancellor was waiting, the being who had orchestrated all the suffering, all the oppression, the one who would finally answer for the Council's crimes. They burst into the central chamber, a cavernous space dominated by a towering throne. And there, lounging upon it like a king, was Zor Vareth, the Supreme Chancellor of the Galactic Council. The ancient alien regarded them with an almost amused expression, his 4 eyes glittering with malice. "Welcome, Commander Rice," he purred, his voice a sibilant hiss. "I have been expecting you." Will leveled his rifle at the Chancellor, his finger tightening on the trigger. "It's over, Zor Vareth. The Council's reign ends today." The alien's laughter echoed through the chamber, a sound that chilled Will to his core. "Oh, you foolish, arrogant human. You have no idea what you've stumbled into. The Council's plans are far grander than your tiny mind can comprehend." Zorvareth rose from his throne, his robes swirling around him like a living shadow. But perhaps a demonstration is in order. Witness the true power of the Galactic Council. The Chancellor raised his hands, and a wave of pure psionic energy erupted from his body, slamming into Will and his team with the force of a supernova. Pain exploded through Will's mind, his body contorting as he fought against the alien's overwhelming power. Beside him, Raven screamed, her own abilities straining to resist Zorvareth's assault. One by one, the strike team fell, their minds and bodies crushed by the Chancellor's might. Will gritted his teeth, channeling every ounce of his willpower into resisting the psionic onslaught. He pushed forward step by agonizing step, his rifle aimed squarely at Zorvareth's heart. The alien's eyes widened in surprise as Will drew closer, fighting through the pain and the pressure. No mere human should have been able to withstand his power. "Impossible," Zorvareth hissed, redoubling his efforts. "You cannot hope to defy the Council's will." But Will didn't falter. Images flashed through his mind, driving him onward. Sarah's sacrifice, Michael's suffering, the countless humans who had been enslaved and experimented on. He would not let their pain be in vain. With a final defiant roar, Will charged forward, closing the distance between himself and the Chancellor. He slammed into the alien with the force of a raging bull, breaking his concentration and sending them both tumbling to the floor. They grappled, human and alien, in a desperate struggle for dominance. Zorvareth's claws raked across Will's armor, leaving glowing scars in their wake. Will retaliated with a vicious headbutt, feeling the alien's exoskeleton crack under the impact. Rolling to his feet, Will snatched up his fallen rifle and leveled it at the Chancellor's head. Zorvareth, dazed and battered, could only look up in a mix of fear and disbelief. "This is for every human you've ever harmed," Will snarled, his finger tightening on the trigger. "For every life you've ruined, for every world you've subjugated." The rifle roared, and Zorvareth's head snapped back, a smoking hole appearing between his four eyes. The Chancellor's body slumped to the floor, lifeless. Will stood over the fallen alien, chest heaving, adrenaline surging through his veins. Around him the strike team began to stir, freed from the Chancellor's psionic grip. Raven limped to his side, her face a mask of pain and triumph. "Is it over?" she asked, her voice hoarse. Will shook his head, a grim smile tugging at his lips. "No, this is just the beginning. We've cut off the head of the snake, but the body still writhes. We have a lot of work ahead of us." He turned to face his team, his eyes blazing with a new purpose. "But we will not rest until every last trace of the Council's influence is wiped from the galaxy. We will free the enslaved, bring justice to the oppressed, and ensure that humanity takes its rightful place among the stars." As they stood there in the heart of the enemy's stronghold, Will knew that the fight was far from over. But for the first time in a long time, he felt a flicker of hope. They had struck a blow against the Council, proven that humanity would not be broken or bowed. And with that knowledge, that unbreakable spirit, they would face whatever challenges lay ahead. For they were human, and they would never stop fighting for their place in the universe. Will stood over the fallen Zorvareth, the prototype weapon clutched tight in his hands. The Supreme Chancellor looked up at him, four eyes wide with fear and desperation. "Wait," Zorvareth croaked, holding up a trembling hand. "You don't understand. We were trying to protect the galaxy, not conquer it." Will's finger tightened on the trigger. "Protect it? By enslaving and experimenting on my people?" "No, you fool." Zorvareth coughed, dark blood splattering his robes. "There is a greater threat, one that terrifies even the Council, the Void Wraiths." Will's brow furrowed. "The what?" "An ancient race older than any of us. They feed on the life force of entire civilizations, leaving nothing but darkness in their wake." Zorvareth struggled to sit up, his wounds oozing. "We sought to use your kind's unique abilities to create a weapon against them. Our methods were harsh, yes, but we acted out of desperation." Will's mind raced, the implications sinking in. If what Zorvareth said was true, then the galaxy faced an even greater danger, one that made the Council's actions seem almost trivial in comparison. Because, Commander Rice, you have seen the lengths we were willing to go to. Do you think we would do such things lightly? Zorvareth's eyes bore into Will's, a hint of pleading in their depths. The Wraiths are coming, and without unity, without combining our strengths, we are all doomed. Will hesitated, torn between his rage at the Council's crimes and the growing realization that they had acted out of fear, not malice. He thought of Sarah's sacrifice, of all the lives lost in the battle against the Saurians. Could he really let that be in vain? Could he doom the galaxy to face this new threat alone? In that moment, a memory surfaced, his mother's voice, soft and gentle, telling him a story from Earth's ancient past. "The enemy of my enemy is my friend," she had said. "Sometimes, Will, we must put aside our differences and stand together against a common foe." "All right," Will said, his voice heavy with the weight of his decision. "We'll face this threat together. But know this, if you betray us, if you return to your old ways, I will end you myself." Zorvareth nodded solemnly, grasping Will's hand in a firm shake. "Understood, Commander. Now let us plan for the battle to come." As word spread of the alliance between humanity and the Council, a new sense of purpose filled the fleets. Ships that had once traded fire now docked side by side, their crews mingling and sharing knowledge. Weapons and tactics were combined, strengths complemented, weaknesses shored up. Will found himself at the center of it all, working closely with Zorvareth and the other Council leaders to devise a strategy against the Wraiths. They pored over ancient texts and long-range scans, piecing together the nature of their enemy. The Wraiths, it seemed, existed partly in another dimension, phasing in and out of reality to strike without warning. Their ships were living entities, pulsing with dark energy and capable of regenerating damage at an alarming rate. But there was hope. The Council's scientists had developed a prototype weapon, one that combined the best of human and alien technology. It utilized a rare element, known as nulerium, which resonated at a frequency that could disrupt the Wraith's dimensional phasing. The catch was that the weapon required a massive power source and had to be fired at close range. It would take a skilled pilot, one with lightning reflexes and nerves of steel, to get close enough to the Wraiths to use it effectively. Will, of course, volunteered for the task. Michael, Raven, and the Ghosts would fly alongside him, providing cover and drawing the Wraiths' fire. As the combined fleet approached the coordinates where the Wraiths had last been spotted, a sense of trepidation filled the air. This was it, the moment of truth. The fate of the galaxy hung in the balance. Will settled into the cockpit of his prototype fighter, the nulerium weapon humming with power. He took a deep breath, steeling himself for the battle to come. "All ships, this is Commander Rice," he broadcast over the fleet-wide channel. "Today we face an enemy, unlike any we have known before. But we do not face it alone. Today we stand united, human and alien alike, in defense of all life. Let us show these Wraiths the strength of our resolve, the power of our unity, for the galaxy." A roar of affirmation filled the comms. 1,000 voices joined as one. The fleet surged forward, weapons primed, shields glowing. And there, emerging from the void like a nightmare made manifest, came the Wraiths. Their ships were vast and twisted, pulsing with an eerie purple light. They seemed to flicker in and out of existence, their forms not quite solid. Will gunned his engines, racing towards the heart of the Wraith formation. Michael and Raven fell in beside him, their ships bristling with weapons. The Wraiths opened fire, lances of dark energy sizzling through space. The allied ships scattered and wove, their shields straining under the onslaught. Will jinked and rolled, his eyes locked on his target. The largest of the Wraith ships loomed before him, its hull writhing with eldritch energies. He thumbed the trigger, and the nulerium weapon roared to life. A beam of blinding white light erupted from his ship, spearing towards the Wraith vessel. It struck home, the Wraith's shields flickering and failing under the onslaught. The beam penetrated its hull, setting off a chain reaction of explosions that ripped through its twisted form. But even as it died, the other Wraiths pressed their attack. Their weapons tore through the Allied ranks, ships exploding into clouds of debris and molten metal. Beside him, Michael's ship took a direct hit. Alarm screamed over the comm, warning of critical damage. "Eject!" Will shouted, his heart in his throat. "Get out of there!" But Michael's reply was calm, almost serene. "No, brother. This is my chance to make things right, to atone for what I've done." With a burst of speed, Michael's ship hurtled towards the largest concentration of Wraith vessels. Will watched in horror as it plunged into their midst, disappearing in a blaze of light. Will felt tears sting his eyes, even as he seized the opportunity. He rallied the fleet, urging them forward into the breach. The Nulirium weapons fired again and again, tearing the Wraiths apart from within. One by one, the nightmarish ships flickered and died, their forms dissolving into nothingness. The Allied ships pressed their advantage, pouring fire into the weakened enemy. And then, as suddenly as it had begun, it was over. The last of the Wraiths vanished, their fleet nothing more than drifting wreckage and fading echoes. A cheer went up over the comms, a cry of victory and relief, but Will barely heard it. His eyes were fixed on the spot where Michael's ship had vanished, his heart heavy with grief and pride. They had won, but the cost had been high. So many lives lost, so much sacrificed in the name of survival. Will knew that the scars of this battle would linger long after the wreckage had been cleared away. But as he looked out at the stars, at the ships of a dozen races united in common cause, he felt a flicker of hope amidst the sorrow. They had faced the darkness and emerged stronger for it, their differences set aside in the face of annihilation. There would be challenges ahead, old wounds to heal and new bonds to forge, but Will knew that they would face them together, united by the memory of those who had fallen and the promise of a brighter tomorrow. He took a deep breath, squaring his shoulders beneath the weight of command. There was still work to be done, a galaxy to rebuild and defend, and he would be there to lead the way, a beacon of hope and resilience in the face of any foe. For he was human, and he would never stop fighting for the future. You have reached the end of the story. If you enjoyed this story and want to support us, please leave a like and subscribe to our channel, and for every comment that says 88, I will heart every single one of them. Thank you for your time.